Even the weathermen don't know which way the wind is going to blow, but I tell you, as sure as the sun comes up, you can bet if you see a cop, he's going to be texting. I'm here at Columbia, and luckily it seems like it's pretty under control. Normally during the day this gate is open, but obviously there's craziness going on. You can see it's all barricaded up. I mean, I don't know, maybe it's temporarily under control. A lot of people are pretty disappointed.
The buses are down too. Nothing's working.
A lot of people are pretty disappointed with what's been going on. It's kind of another world up here. Been up here before, but, you know, on the show. But I generally don't come up to 116th Street. Not my thing. People from New York. No, it's just kind of different, you know, low buildings and different vibe. There was a speech from Mike Johnson earlier, but I don't really need Democrats on the live stream. People super hate him. I can't understand what happened. You know, when I met him months ago before he was Speaker of the House, I was impressed. I thought he might be good. I don't think that anymore. Yeah, this is the gate that's usually open and you can kind of walk through, but obviously not today. What is with these saps? I think any of these kind of, you know, you have your right to protest, but any of it that shuts down stuff and redirects all these cops who should be doing other things. These police officers have a lot of texting to do elsewhere in the city. Yeah, I mean, I guess it's all, wow. So look at that, we've got vandalism. That's not your First Amendment right. Amazing. Might not see anything too exciting today. I mean, that suits me all right. The reason I selected this, Johnson did a bait and switch, Donny Girl says. What do you mean? Because he said he wasn't going to come. Yeah, I heard that. And then I was like, well, maybe I won't come up here either. But then I said, I don't care about Mike Johnson. I'm not coming here to see Mike Johnson. And also, anybody who wants to listen to Mike Johnson is going to get a better view and also hear him better on, you know, Fox or WPIX or everybody else who's covering it. But yeah, I mean, I don't know, is anybody learning anything here? This is still a tax-exempt public charity, so our money is subsidizing these whiny brats and all of their stuff. Look at this. I don't know, is this making the college experience better? I doubt it. The reason why I selected that Weatherman graphic, I think a lot of people might know, people who've been watching Crowdsource the Truth for a while, know about the Weather Underground, and I mean, lots of people know about it. I didn't know too much about it until I don't know if I knew anything about it until David Hawkins told me about it. Our dearly departed friend, David, left too soon. I think he would be simultaneously disgusted and fascinated by what's going on right now, because he told us about how Bernardine Dorn was teaching that, what was it called? Paradigms in torture or something like that? Paradigms and practices in torture. That was at Northwestern University. That's sort of shocking that they would have a class like that. Who's learning about torture? And why would they allow Bernardine Dorn to be a college professor? There's a lot of weird things going on. Anyway, the Weather Underground, for people who might not know, that was a domestic terrorism organization, anarchist, Marxist. Maybe that's technically not exactly what it was. A lot of people get into the nuances and the subtleties of anarchy versus, I don't even know. They were maniacs, bombing buildings and doing all kinds of crazy stuff, killing cops, robbing banks, everything. You know, Chesa Boudin, people might recall, the guy who was the district attorney of San Francisco, his parents were in jail for that Westchester. There was a Brinks truck robbery in Westchester County just was it 1 year before or 1 year after? It was right around the time that the FBI JTTF was created. The FBI itself tells us that New York was the first place that they had one of these joint terrorism task forces. It's a little vague. They tell us that at a lunch between whoever was the special agent in charge of the New York FBI field office at the time. How you guys doing? No riots today?
Not over here.
It's early still, right? See, I thought they were going to say don't record us. I saw somebody else on Twitter earlier today walking by the pro-Palestinian protest, and some girl wearing a Palestinian, scarf was like, "Oh, excuse me, would you mind not recording to respect people's privacy?" And the person who was doing the recording was rather polite. Here's your depreciating electric Porsche. She was polite. I would have told someone stupid who would say something like that, if you want privacy, go home and mind your own damn business. If you want to come out in public, disrupt everything, or not, just being in public, you got no expectation of privacy. I don't know where all these people have come up with all these stupid ideas about what the law is, but I'm getting a bit disjointed. We were talking about Bernadine Dorn teaching the torture class, but at Columbia, I think today is like the 60-something. When did they take over? Columbia University was previously taken over by students, including Bernadine Dorn's sister, who's now a professor here. So why are you allowing criminals to become professors? Why did Andrew Cuomo pardon the father of Chesa Boudin and let him out of jail? I don't know. So see, now if you search for Columbia University takeover, it'll talk about what's going on today. But I think Eric Holder might have been involved as well. So all of these people that are unfinished march, a conversation with Eric Holder. Eric Holder was armed when he took part in a protest. This is an article from 2012. Attorney General Eric Holder was armed when he took part in a protest at Columbia and occupied a school office for 5 days. As a college student, Eric Holder participated in a protest where dozens took over an empty office in hopes of turning it into a black student lounge. So there you go, breaking the law, having guns, and then that guy becomes the Attorney General. What is the law, really, at this point? We've got Donald Trump down there, Center Street, isn't it 100 Center Street or something? Wherever that courthouse is, they're all in that plaza. But Trump is down there getting railroaded here. If you want to pay 70 grand to go to this university and try and learn something, you're going to get rioted on. And if you're Jewish, you're going to get chased out of the place. I don't know, did any of the Jewish students here have anything to do with what was going on in Israel? That's the issue that I have, is that they just look at you and say, oh, you're Jewish, you're a Zionist, and now we want to do something to you. I've been subjected to that. I'm being discriminated against here in New York as a Jew. I think I've mentioned George's brother is on an insane campaign sending letters around to everybody, including lawyers, in my case against the city. He's out of his mind. Unbelievable. But there's been a big break in that case, Goodman versus the city of New York. Elon Musk has appeared by counsel. That's super interesting, isn't it? He has resisted that for 6 months. The case began October 31st, 2023. Frightening times, it is. It's true, Mark. So, Donny girl, what was the bait and switch with Johnson? That he said he wasn't going to come and then he came? I mean, that could be a security thing. I don't really care about that so much. This guy's wearing a mask. I don't know. What's with the masks coming back? I was on the subway just now coming up here. I'm on like 118th Street. It's a hell of a walk. And a guy comes on, didn't look very concerned with his health to me, but he had a mask on up to here. He had a baseball cap down to here and just sunglasses. Had a joint in his hand, a thick, meaty spliff that he had just put out and was reeking up the car. Now, I think weed is fine, but you got kids on the subway, it's the public. It's just a lack of respect for other people. You gotta be polite. So, this is the back of Columbia here. I don't know, I mean, obviously I'm not gonna get in there. I just wanted to come up here and kind of take the temperature of exactly what is going on, see if people were going crazy in here. Doesn't look like it, but yeah, the Weather Underground won, you know. On David Hawkins' show, we had played this radio, it was a clip from a radio show, I guess in the 60s, where Bernardine Dorn was sending these tapes that it was like the Weather Underground manifesto. That's another thing, George's brother. He thinks the Twitter coup, which is a news article, is a manifesto. I don't see how he thinks that. Oh, I do actually. He's a mental case, psychopath, obsessed stalker, who I can't get arrested or even necessarily to stop. Now, people who are following me on Twitter might have noticed I was on a bit of a tear this morning, putting out a bunch of images and going back to some of the videos from 2 and 3 years ago of lunatics who have involved themselves in the various protests where clearly they're working for the cops, in my view. If you're not following me on Twitter, please go and check it out. At JG_CSTT. Now, if Charles were here, he could tell us some more about why it is that if this place is a public charity and our tax dollars subsidize all the nonsense that they're doing in there, why the public is not allowed in. I've been in there before, so definitely there are times where you are. Obviously today it's sensitive because the students are ready to tear the place down, so who knows what's going on. But that's basically, I guess, all we're gonna see with Columbia. If there's a riot, people will see that later. But get onto Twitter and check that out, at JG_CSTT. You can also see these videos, and you know, anytime I put a clip up there on Twitter, I'm also linking it to the full video on odyssey.com/@crowdsourcethetruth. That actually, in certain instances, is the only place that you can see these videos, because this team of social engineering maniacs that have been thwarting kind of everything I'm doing for the past 7 years, they had a system in place when they started. And I love Mike Tyson's quote that everybody's got a plan until you get punched in the face, because that applies to everything. Obviously his perspective comes from boxing, but it's like, you know, you get these elaborate scripts and storyboards and everything, and then you show up at the location and the house that was supposed to be there burned down. So, okay, we need to do something else today. And you improvise. And the same sort of thing happened to these guys. They were all set up to shut down people who were monetized on YouTube and to shut you out of Twitter. But I don't think they had plans for all these different things like odyssey.com/@crowdsourcethetruth and crowdsourcethetruth.substack.com. People can still read the Twitter coup on crowdsourcethetruth.substack.com. Please do, it's free. I'm curious to know if you think it reads like a manifesto. I think a manifesto is basically like the Unabomber and these other people who sort of lay out their beefs and their plans for how they're gonna like overthrow or whatever. I think, in fact, if you look up, let's look up manifesto and see what the definition of a manifesto is. I think it does usually reference manifesto. It says, a manifesto is a public declaration of policy and aims, especially one issued before an election by a political party or candidate. I always thought it was more of something issued by like somebody who's going to do revolution or something, like somebody to overthrow something. Let's see, manifesto is a written declaration of the intentions, motives, or views of the issuer to be an individual group or political party or movement. Yeah, I don't know that what I wrote qualifies as a manifesto. It's a news article explaining how Valerie Caproni and Adam Sharp, at the behest of Barack Obama and others, inserted the FBI into Twitter. I might mention in there that I'm going to continue pursuing the restoration of my rights and remuneration of money that I believe these people have stolen from me through legal action. I don't know that that qualifies as a manifesto, though. Anyway, this is how social engineers work. They like to reframe things and convince people of things and get people to do things that aren't in their best interest. They're liars. There's some social engineering Twitter account that was getting all upset at some of the stuff that I was publishing today, because what I was doing is I was showing how 2 and 3 years ago, Scott Libido, and still today actually, Scott Libido and Johnny Tobacco and his girlfriend Cara Casso, whatever her name is, and all these other freaky people surrounding them seem to be protected by the police, like way more than you would expect anybody to be, because the police don't really seem to be protecting anybody most of the time. They're texting, they're handing out tickets when you get choked. Protecting people doesn't seem to be what I see anybody in the police doing, but what I'm talking about is literally following them around in a crowd, like they see me. People should watch it on Twitter, but they come over to me. The cops are hanging out. When Tobacco is talking to me, the cops come and try and bump me and try and ruin the broadcast. You know, this is all planned, in my opinion. I mean, is it a surprise that a lieutenant in the police, while I'm talking to Johnny Tobacco and getting scoped by another police officer who, as I look at the video now, I never noticed this before today, 3-year-old video, he's making eye contact with the guy who comes and bumps into me. Now, I think we've seen this bizarre statue from afar. Have we ever looked at it up close? Maybe we have. We came up here a while ago with Charles. This is weird as hell, isn't it? I like the face. It reminds me of that movie, Mission to the Moon. Is that what it was called? Voyage to the Moon. It was like the first visual effects movie. Got involved with double exposure and whatever. What the hell are we looking at here? I don't know. People are going to know more about this than I do. But the police very clearly seem to be protecting Scott Libido, Johnny Tobacco, who else? That crazy crackhead Barney. Everybody saw she was basically harassing Alec Baldwin. Pretty bad when you can be such a wretch that you make people sympathetic towards Alec Baldwin. Who thought that could happen? Here we go. This is the Ring of Freedom on June 12th, 1986. 12 lower school and 12 upper school works were unveiled. These sculptures begin with the 5th animal to the left of the plaque. That's just these down here. That's not explaining what the big thing is. Maybe there's another sign. I think that dog didn't like it that I was standing near the little kid. Noah's Ark is what that is. Under the rainbow, pledging peace and renewal after the flood, God's loyal servant Noah emerges from his ark with several animals. That's a strange interpretation of Noah's Ark, in my view. But anyway, I mean, all of these maniacs, they travel in packs. Scott Libido, Johnny Tobacco, Orrin Levi, his brother. Walter Masterson. I do not know the real name of that crackhead Barney person. I'd like to find it. I'd like to press charges against her. That is a disgusting person, unhinged and a menace to the public. But yeah, pretty crazy when you can make large numbers of people sympathetic towards Alec Baldwin. The other thing that was very strange about that encounter is that it didn't seem random. Again, if people are looking at my Twitter, I posted a bunch of images that I found, well, right on the cover of the New York Post, right? He's inside some kind of coffee place, which Charles recognized. Mark says it's Noah's Ark as a portal. What do you mean, like a portal to another dimension, like CERN? Open it up and have, what did he want to have? Some kind of other dimensional beings coming through, right? It's creepy, I agree. Satanic, I agree. I don't know why. The fact that it's Noah's Ark, I agree. I'm not even religious, but I find it offensive. Not offensive to me, but it immediately strikes me as something that's going to obviously offend people, because Noah's Ark is all biblical and everything. And then why not make it a boat with an old guy and some animals? And I did a Noah's Ark with Eric Adams, driving it when we had all the flooding. But I didn't make it creepy. I made it funny. And it didn't really even go too biblical. I just put a bunch of animals on a big giant wood boat with stupid Eric Adams up top. That was a joke. That's not funny. I don't know. That's too weird. Yeah, people agree, basically. Brad Pitless said Alec Baldwin set that up to get sympathy. I don't think so. I think the New York Post set that up, because if you'll notice on the cover of the New York Post, I mean, maybe that's right. Brad could be right. I don't know. I'm speculating now based on the evidence that I've seen in the public domain. Like Brad, you might look at the same evidence and come to a different conclusion. I'm not being sarcastic when I say that. That's a serious statement. I don't like to make things up and guess at things, but it is possible that my interpretation of evidence will not match yours. So, I don't know, Brad, if you have other evidence that, I don't think Alec Baldwin would do that. He's got a lot on his plate right now. I don't think he needs sympathy. He needs to stay out of jail for involuntary manslaughter. And by the way, dislike Alec Baldwin or like Alec Baldwin, it's not like he intended to kill the girl. I think that he's behaved badly in terms of his reaction after the fact, but it's not like he's some cold-blooded murderer who goes around shooting people for kicks. I think it was an extremely unfortunate accident, and he's been a little bit weaselly, more than a little bit weaselly, in trying to get out of it, but without going into the sympathy for Alec Baldwin thing. That's a legal matter to be handled by the court, not for crackhead Barney to come and, harass the guy. If he's found guilty, they'll put him in jail and give him whatever punishment he needs to get. Right? I'll stay over here. I don't need to go over that way. They'll give him whatever punishment he needs to get. It doesn't give people the right to go around harassing him and provoking him in public like that. He should be able to get coffee in peace. The thing that bothers me is that how'd they get those photographs of him outside the coffee place? Because I guess, just like with Ghislaine Maxwell sitting at the hamburger restaurant at the In-N-Out Burger, which is also sketchy as hell, they'll say, oh, yeah, that's just a bystander with a cell phone. I don't think so, because I am usually paying a lot of attention to stuff when I walk around without the camera. I try to be. And there have been times that something, oh, look at that, surprising happens. Yeah, let's go over here. There might be more stuff going on this way. But when something surprising happens and you're on the street and you try to take out your camera, hit that app, get the thing in frame and take the picture, it's done. So what the New York Post, I guess, would have us believe is that somebody's standing there on University Place or wherever that's happening, and they're like, oh, is that Alec Baldwin? is fighting with somebody. Let me take out my phone and take 2 perfect pictures that look like they were shot on like a 200 millimeter lens. Very, very sharp. They do not look like blurry, crappy cell phone pictures that they blew up to make them large enough to put on the cover of the newspaper. They look like some sort of photographer who has the ability to get stuff right on the front page of the New York Post was with her and seemed to be stalking Alec Baldwin. Now, I don't know why. You know, we could start to speculate. Lee super hates that, speculating about motivation. We definitely don't know what the motivation would be, but we can definitely say. So we got Ruby's Roo saying, isn't that woman who harassed Alec Baldwin the same woman who interrupted a rally that you went to 2 summers ago near Trump Tower? She was wearing Trump costume. Yes, that's crackhead Barney. Not only did she do that, we've encountered that woman a number of times. And I encourage people to get onto Twitter, on X, and follow me at JG_CSTT. I've just put up a lot of videos and images about this woman, crackhead Barney, because I'd like to know her real name, because I want to press criminal charges for sexual assault. The first time, or one of the first times I encountered that disgusting, vile creature, she was walking around like in a bikini or something, and it's not a person who should be wearing that. And she had a turkey baster that she was inserting into her vagina, and she stuck it in my face and was touching me with it and getting it close enough to me that the really malodorous smell of her vaginosis infected bonus hole, it was, you could smell it, and it was disgusting. And the point is, I don't understand how that's not sexual assault. It seems to me, if a man did something remotely similar, he would rightly be put up on some kind of charge and put in jail. This woman is out of control. Her entire purpose is to just go around and harass people, and sure, counter-protesting, that's a First Amendment right. But exposing me against my will to her bodily fluids, particularly during the middle of a pandemic, I don't see how it's not sexual assault. And straight up regular assault. She was also hanging out with that idiot Walter Masterson, and I forget the name of his friend, but those guys were doing all kinds of hoaxes on the subway, that they were advertising on TikTok, starting fights with people. And they say, oh, relax, it's just comedy. I see all these videos where people go and they'll go into the arcade and they go up to the toughest guy while he's playing some arcade motorcycle game and get on the back of the motorcycle and put, you know, a dude did this, put his arms around the guy, and you know, the toughest looking person you could imagine stands up and starts to beat the crap out of the dude. And he's like, oh no, it's a prank, it's a prank. And the guy was like, I don't care, just beat his ass. So pranks are absolutely stupid. I saw this woman on the way up. That's one of the first times I've ever seen a Chinese homeless person. Not good. But anyway, yes, that is the same woman. And so my point is, I wanted to put this all over Twitter because somebody on there is going to know who she is. And, you know, this is a network of assholes who are stalking and pursuing me all around. There was another social engineer on Twitter earlier today with an account that was created 4 months ago telling me about something that I should have figured out about Manny Grossman a long time ago, blah, blah, blah. I mean, it is interesting that that came up right now because, of course, I did meet Manny Grossman in the park at those, you know, those rallies, those protests, whatever they are. What is this bus doing? The buses in New York City are driven by the stupidest people in the world. It's just the worst. Every downside of driving your own car, plus every downside of public transportation. I hate the bus. But Manny was involved in those protests initially, and it seems to me that can't be everybody, but a huge number of people who were involved in those things were either working for the cops or the FBI or what. So this goes back to the Weather Underground, right? Because it does seem like the creation of the FBI JTTF was at least in very close proximity to the Weather Underground doing all their business with blowing stuff up, etc. Now again, you take yourself back to 1960, 1970, 1980, particularly if the Weather Underground is blowing up townhouses and doing all kinds of stuff that's maybe never happened before, you can understand the motivation of the NYPD and the FBI saying, hey, we need some kind of special task force to deal with this crazy level of crime that maybe, other places that aren't New York City don't have this, so we need to do something a little different. But see, it also causes me to wonder, because it seems like the JTTF has metastasized like cancer and changed the nature of law enforcement in this country. So what I'm getting at is, if the Joint Terrorism Task Force allows the FBI to exert some kind of control over the NYPD, I read somewhere when I was doing all this research into Valerie Caproni and all of her crazy ideas that she's been promoting since she was the FBI General Counsel, there was a lot of different public speeches that people from the FBI made, and they were telling you what they wanted to do. They were saying that they were an inadequately staffed force of 17,000 some odd agents attempting to engage in law enforcement over 330 million people, and that they couldn't do it. So that they had devised this plan that through the JTTF they would use local law enforcement agencies, kind of like, finger on the hand, right? So you have an FBI JTTF within the NYPD, and when the FBI needs to mobilize in New York City, they're utilizing the NYPD. And the thing is, the FBI loves these MOUs, memorandums of understanding. Charles hates them because they're not contracts, and it's just sort of like you write it down on a paper and whatever. But basically the FBI takes over your local law enforcement when we get involved with the JTTF, and we know that from all this dust-up that happened in Portland with the Portland Christmas tree bomber. All the news, the Oregonian and all these different things, you go back to, when was that happening? 2010, 11, something like that. Or it must have been, maybe 2009 and 2010. We got to go check those articles, but that's when Caproni was the general counsel. And I didn't realize all this until much later. Bus drivers are a breed of their own. It's true, Harry. I didn't realize all this until much later, but that's the origin story that George Webb told me. And, anonymous, stupid troll accounts will say things like, oh, stop talking about George Webb. People are sick of hearing about it. I don't care. Anybody who thinks they're going to get some anonymous Twitter account and tell me what to do obviously doesn't understand what's going on. I do not listen to anonymous Twitter accounts. I don't generally listen to people who I've known for my whole entire life if they tell me something I don't like. But the reason I talk about George Webb and his psychopath, Nazi, wife-swapping maniac of a brother is because these two fucking assholes won't leave me alone. Every damn day there's a new filing in court. There's a new effort to take down one of my platforms, or ongoing efforts to take down the platforms. Please become a sponsor on odyssey.com/@crowdsourcethetruth. Odyssey has been tweeting lately that they're cooking up some kind of decentralized way for their system to work. I don't know if I understand exactly what that means, but they're saying that it's going to make them more resistant to censorship. And they're doing this in response to everything that, like Australia came out and said they want X to be censored all over the world. I don't understand what makes Australia think they can do that. If I was owning X, I would say, we're just going to not have it in Australia. Bye. No offense, Australia, but would anybody outside of Australia care if that happened? I don't think so. Anyway, it's the point is, it's not just Australia. I think Ireland has some pretty crazy censorship rules coming in. I mean, who wants all this? Why do people want all this? But get onto odyssey.com/@crowdsourcethetruth. Even if you subscribe on there for free, you can still access a lot of this legacy content. And you see, they're constantly trying, when I say they, I mean George's brother is constantly trying to make up a new story as to why he has some standing to come and sue me for whatever kind of maniac stuff. But the truth of the matter is, I never knew him or that he even existed, and wasn't talking about him or saying anything about him until he started dedicating his life to trying to destroy my work, destroy my business, and sue me until I'm totally broke. And we realize now why they want to destroy the work, because I've recorded so much evidence of what they've been doing that if people go back and look at it on Odyssey, you can put a lot of things together. I mean, I'm putting together things from years ago. So this anonymous account says to me, oh, you should have known that Manny Grossman was doing whatever this anonymous account was talking about. Well, look, the truth is I figured out that Manny Grossman is a social engineer, or at very least an asshole, and he was dealt with. He was kicked off the show. I haven't discussed this before, but I will now. Manny Grossman created a huge issue with Subscribestar, and they wouldn't tell me exactly what it was because they have all kinds of client privacy things they have to adhere to. But I noticed during some conflagration with that stupid moron that, because I had subscribed when he was on the show, I was subscribed to his Subscribestar. And it, even people that you've unsubscribed from, it leaves it in there in a section of like unsubscribed accounts or whatever. Like, here, you used to sponsor this person, they want you to click sponsor it again. Yes. And on his, it had something there that I had never seen on anybody before that said like, removed or deleted or something like that. And I sent them a message and said, what is going on with Manny Grossman? It says he's been removed. And they said, yes, he's been removed, but we can't discuss it for client privacy reasons or whatever they said. So I don't know, I can only guess, but it's quite clear that that guy wanted to do all kinds of things to piss me off and mess me up. He disappeared, Brad says. What do you mean, off of Twitter? Or he's not doing videos anymore? I haven't been paying attention to him, except that this person brought him up today, which I found very interesting because I didn't mention him, but obviously he came around from this crowd of morons who seemed to work for the cops. And the reason I stopped dealing with Manny was because somebody came to me or sent a message on the YouTube show when we were doing the Son of Sam YouTube show and said, hey, I'm the person or a person who was raped in that park, and I know where this is and that is and the other thing is, and this and that and the other thing. And this bird, look at this pizza these birds were eating. They like the bread, I guess. That was so, I'm sorry, we didn't, let's give them a moment. They'll walk away and have a bird pizza party. I want to get that on video. Yeah, there we go. They're back. Bird pizza party. The New York slice, So, Manny, what was I talking about with him? Oh, Carvel is coming soon. I tell you, it is junk food, but so delicious. I like Carvel. So what was I just telling everybody about Manny? He did all kinds of things to screw me up. Like, oh yeah, so this guy contacts me. And listen, I try to be very generous with people that I'm attempting to create mutually beneficial relationships with, and I do it for a number of reasons. First of all, it's how I'd like to be treated. Second of all, I just think the second you show somebody that you're going to be greedy in a deal, it's the beginning of the end of the deal, for me at least. So, and there's a lot of people who have done that sort of stuff to me in the past, not necessarily on Crowdsource the Truth, because I've run it in a way that's sort of different than some of these other things. Now, is this a weed truck up here? The green what? Yes, it is, Uncle Bud. This is the same truck that used to be down by me, so why are the police not arresting Uncle Bud up here? Strange. But, yeah, see this ADD, it's a monster walking around New York City trying to talk and look at stuff. So the guy contacted me, and rather than being like, oh, I'm gonna, keep this contact close to the vest and I'll go interview the person, and then once I control the relationship, then I'll introduce them. I didn't do any of that. I just said, I'm gonna send you directly to Manny because he knows much more about the details and everything that you're talking about, this tree stump or whatever it is that was gonna prove that this person knew something. Although in retrospect, if you think about it, don't usually hear that. Somebody getting pulled over by the cops in Manhattan. Is it the Porsche with the crazy no muffler? Maybe. But in retrospect, that person could have been a plant, because why did they contact me instead of Manny? Everybody knew Manny was the expert on Son of Sam, and I basically, the only stuff I knew about it was what we were learning as we were covering it. It was interesting because we were going to Untermeyer Park and kind of discovering things firsthand. That part was fun and just a, on the ground investigation. But that easily could have been a social engineering play that would have worked like this. Let's have a fake person contact Jason, say that they are a rape victim from Son of Sam, and then Manny will corroborate that by saying, oh yeah, this tree stump, blah, blah. Jason won't know the difference. And then somewhere down the road, we'll spring the trap and there'll be something that makes Jason look ridiculous. That seems like that would have been what would happen. The reason Manny and I stopped talking was, first of all, because he acted like a dick. And he even came right out and said, oh, I feel like I'm not just a guest on this show, but I'm like the executive producer or something. So he used to ask me to make him thumbnails and stuff, really audacious stuff. Takes a lot of time to make the thumbnails that I do, and I'm not in the business of making them for other people, but I might have done it once and then told them, look, I just don't really have the time to do that in general. Another time I made a thumbnail for a show that we were doing, and he put it on another video before our show came out. I was like, dude, take that down. What the hell are you doing? So again, I always have to give people leeway that they could just be dolts with no sense of tact. I don't want to just jump to the conclusion that somebody's a social engineer. And by the way, I haven't gone into this level of detail about Manny and dealt with him for years, and it's been years. But because this social engineering Twitter account contacted me today, that was created in October or November, with a fake name, a fake picture, very few tweets, and starts telling me, oh, the term social engineering is so overused, it just doesn't even mean anything anymore. And it's like, listen, stop trying to influence me, you social engineer. I'm not going to listen to a fake account. And of course, I asked that person to DM me their phone number because, people will say, oh, you talked to John Cullen and he's using a fake name. Right, but I've met John, I know who he is. And the reason why I said, DM me your phone number and let's talk on the phone is so that I can understand who I'm dealing with. Yeah, and of course, there's no DM from that person. So that's a social engineer. Tobacco Joe. Johnny Tobacco, yes, that's him. Yeah, so it's funny too, because you go back to those videos from 3 years ago before I knew those guys were scumbag social engineers up to no good. Tobacco was like, oh, you got me in trouble with that post. I was like, what are you talking about? Because those guys were there for Max Pub. Remember all that business with Max Pub? This sort of flared up because I saw them all in Collect Pond Park. down there by the Trump trial. I was like, wait a minute, what are all these FBI UCOs doing here? And they might not be FBI UCOs. I think what's happening is we actually have a network of private industry that creates these kind of street performance actors who get involved in all kinds of crazy things. Max Azzarello's father is or was the principal at something called Reality Consulting, Inc., which some corporate records seem to think was dissolved like 10 years ago. But then there's other records that seem to indicate that it's done business as recently as 2022 or even later. So I'm not sure what's going on with that, but the most I can find out here about Reality Consulting, Inc. is that it appears to be another one of these social engineering companies along the lines of Strong Towns, which Max Azzarello's own LinkedIn and other records associated with him, he's telling you he worked there. And when I started tweeting about the CEO of that place, he didn't do like Adam Sharp and have a lawyer call me and say, you better do X, Y, and Z or we're going to sue you. He blocked me on Twitter. And I think the reason he did that is because he can't deny what I'm saying, because it's true. And a lot of these people don't want to tangle with me because, by the way, keep in mind that even when the Emmys brought that lawsuit, that was 4 years ago, and I was not as hardened to this kind of stupid crap as I am right now. Jack Maxey shut up pretty quickly when he raised the threat of some kind of legal action, and I explained to him that saying that somebody is an intelligence operative is not actionable, I don't think, because first of all, it's a matter of opinion based on evidence in the public domain, and second of all, even if he is, so if you say, oh, you work for the CIA or you work for the FBI, that's not against the law to work for those things, so how is it defamatory to say that? You might not like it, but it doesn't matter. Then I pointed out to him that him publicly declaring that he had depositions from my lawsuit that made me look bad and threatening to release those was clearly a false statement calculated to disparage me in my profession as a journalist. And I said to him, you better release that stuff or retract the statement and admit that you lied, because the depositions from lawsuits that I've been involved in are confidential and sent back to the Emmys. I don't even have them, and they're not on the docket. That was all lawyer's eyes only stuff. So what the hell was he talking about? So he shut up right away. You know who else shut up right away was Charles Rixey and his stupid Nazi friend, that British guy in Japan or Korea or whatever. And by the way, you've noticed now that I've referred to two individuals as Nazis, and I know that some people get very upset. Tucker Carlson got really upset in an interview. He was talking to Lex Friedman, and he was commenting on Putin's statement about Ukrainian Nazis. And Tucker Carlson dismissed it. He's like, I don't like it when people say people are Nazis because it's so overused. No, I'm talking about actual supporters of the Nazi ideology of the political party that rose to power in Germany in the 1930s. There's evidence in the public domain that George Henry Swigert may well have been an Operation Paperclip Nazi. I can't make sense of the fact that he never got any money as the patent holder of the full duplex cordless telephone. Or even if people say, oh, inventors get screwed all the time. Yes, that's true. But do those inventors have sons who are the most litigious maniacs anybody has ever seen, who've been suing everybody under the sun for the past 32 years and filing another 40 to 70 page piece of nonsense in the court against me every day? If he's got that capability, why not use it to sue Motorola for 30 years, or GTE, or Nokia, or Apple, or any of these things? I would imagine it's possible, particularly if you have a valid claim, like, hey, my father invented this and his estate was deprived of the whatever. You send that to these big companies, out of sympathy, they might say, you know what, we've made $80 billion from this, give this guy 10 million and get him to go away. It's less than it's going to cost us to be involved in litigation for the next 32 years. But he's never sued a single party like that. Why? He just wants to sue me. And by the way, when we get to the point that the judge says, okay, it's been 3.5 years and 380 stupid filings by you, good job, traffic cop, encroaching on the box as I'm trying to cross. When the judge says, hey, it's been 3.5 years and we've got 380 moronic filings from you, there's one claim or two claims that survive, then he withdraws voluntarily and then brings another suit elsewhere. This is not the activity of a serious litigant who has legitimate claims that they want to resolve. Right? See, they're all accusing me of bringing frivolous lawsuits to harass them, but that's not true. The reason I am repeatedly bringing lawsuits is because I'm not a lawyer, and in many regards, I still don't know what the hell I'm doing. I'm learning things every day, and sometimes I'm learning things about what I've done that was incorrect, and sometimes it's too late to go back and fix it. So in the case of Adam Sharp, it is true. I've sued him more than once, and those lawsuits have failed. But that's because I was unable to resolve this crazy problem that all of these, fancy, expensive law firms have brought against me. So, paperclip, exactly. That would make sense. Because, see, all the stuff that George wrote in that book about his father, which, by the way, how is that legitimate history? The son writes a hagiography book about the father, saying he's great and he did this and that in the Army. I mean, the whole premise of Operation Paperclip is that the US Army took Nazi technicians, Nazi scientists, Nazi intelligence people, and integrated them into the US government, the US intelligence community, academia, medical science, all over the place. It's widely reported that it's more than 1,600 Nazi scumbags integrated into society. Herr Schweigert may have been one. Was he a garage genius who invented this full duplex cordless phone and then just signed over the patent for dubious reasons? He was threatened by the union, I believe George said. So if that's the case, there would be a very good cause of action for saying he signed this under duress. He was forced by X, Y, and Z. Go and sue Motorola. Why didn't he do that in 1980 or 1978? I think they released the first commercial cordless phone. Had to be using technology and ideas from that patent, no? Patented 1968, 1966, something like that. 1978, that thing would have still been going. I don't understand. What does make sense is if he was an Operation Paperclip Nazi and they said, listen, George Henry, you Nazi fuck, whatever you invent, we own. And there's nothing you can do about it. And George's brother would know about that deal, and that would explain perhaps why he hasn't sued anybody. It would also explain how these idiots might have gotten into this intelligence community, because back to the JTTF, and Valerie Caproni doing all of her business in Portland, she went there in 2009 or 10 or 11, something like that. She went there as the FBI General Counsel with somebody else from the FBI to try to convince the City Council of Portland and the Portland Police Department to reestablish their relationship with the FBI JTTF. And the Portland police were saying no, because the JTTF wants our officers to do things that are unconstitutional. Can you believe that? At that time, Portland was fighting for people's rights. And Caproni, I think they won and got the JTTF in there. So I do believe that basically every single local law enforcement agency, particularly, I mean, maybe there are some that don't have this JTTF, but the NYPD is like polluted with it. In fact, in 2017, maybe 19, no, it would have been 17 because it was James Comey giving this speech to some New York Police Department, FBI, big party, saying that the New York Police Department, JTTF, is the granddaddy of them all. And I do believe that all of those Special Response Group, SRG, officers that we see with the huge heavy tactical weapons and different kind of body armor and different uniforms and different markings on the cars, I think all of that is controlled by JTTF. I'm not sure if I've done this on camera, but when I've asked them questions like that, they get very frazzled, kind of like that cop who smiled when I was walking into the park the other day and asked him if Orrin Levi had arrived yet. Then when I turned the camera around on him, he got really nervous. So we're starting to develop a large pool of evidence that Orrin Levi and Johnny Tobacco and Scott Libido and Kara. Remember, Kara also, she got involved in the whole New York Freedom Fighters thing. See, my gut tells me that that started out legitimately with that guy. I keep saying his name was Andrew, but I think it was not. I forget the guy's name, who was one of the first guys. He moved to Israel or something like that. But it started with him and Joe, and they were just like in the park, like just yelling into a bullhorn or a microphone or whatever. And they seemed sincere and they seemed real. But then all these other people started coming, and, I think one thing that they try to do is that they want to make these people, social media stars and influencers, because I think they rightly presume that most people become enthralled with that. And I mean, it generally comes, you're going to be making money if a lot of people are looking at your social media and you get invited to things and everybody wants to treat you like, oh, I want to meet you and all that. And a lot of people are seduced by that. And look at how they're trying to take away influence from Crowdsource the Truth. Shutting off the channels, turning off the, look at that, how fancy that looks. Very European. The Apthorpe, I don't know, fancy apartment building, I guess. But this is the whole picking winners and losers, and this is what Adam Sharp loves to do as the president of the Emmys. If you're ESPN, you can submit fake names. He's going to be too preoccupied with bullshit lawsuits against me to realize for the entire 6 years that he's been president and CEO of the National Academy of Television Arts and Sciences, that just giving out fake real Emmys to fake people. It's an absolutely disgraceful failure by a guy who has no idea what he's doing. And there's a lot of evidence to suggest that he's in the CIA. He got super upset when I said that about his father. Now, I can't prove these things. This is my speculation. I guess you'd call it pure opinion based on evidence that I've seen. And like Brad said before, other people sometimes look at evidence and come to different conclusions than I do, and that's fine. Sometimes that causes me to say, well, what other evidence have you seen that I haven't seen? And it's possible that Brad has some that he'll tell me about, and I'll say, ooh, you're right. Stuff like that has happened before. Not with any of this yet, but it still could. Now, I think there was some kind of migrant fight going on at this hotel, or Charles and I walked by this one time before. I forget what was going on. This is a nice and calm looking dog. So, I feel like I was on a tear there and kind of lost my train of thought, but we got a lot of stuff going out of business up here too. Oh yeah, and I wanted to come out and do this walk because, Charles is traveling internationally. People are going to remember that Charles is moving out of the United States, so he's now, boy, that looks pretty good. French cream donut. Huh. Not really in the mood for a donut right now, but that looks like a good one. So Charles is moving out of the country, and he's got a lot of stuff to do to get that done. I don't know. would not want to be doing all that right now. But I get it. So he's traveling, and we will be doing the show tonight. Well, if there's Aussies in Manhattan, they can use Twitter while they're in the United States, but I'm not going to be dictated to by some lady in Australia. I would just fire all of Australia over that, no offense. And I like Australia. I've been to Australia. I actually liked it a lot. I don't know if I like it so much now after all the lockdown camps and all of that, but I was there, I guess maybe 2003 or 4, Darling Harbor and Manly Beach and all that. And then I went to the, what was it called? Like the E Hotel or something, E Sushi. That was a really super good sushi restaurant, like on the roof of a hotel. So good. I guess they're closer to Japan or the Pacific Ocean or something, but it was great. Nowhere is safe. That's what I told Charles, exactly. Charles is smart, but I agree. I don't think moving to another country solves the problem, but it doesn't matter. That's what he's doing. And so we're going to have his show tonight at 8. And I just wanted to come out. And it's like 70 degrees. So, you know, even though the weathermen don't know which way the wind will blow, it was still good to come out. One more thing about the Weather Underground. Do people remember when I used to speak to David Hawkins about this article? This was in the New York Times on September 11th, 2001. Not the day after, you know, not after the terrorist or whatever we want to call that, the incident occurred. This was printed in the morning edition of the New York Times. An interview with Bill Ayers about his book where he says he has no regrets for his love of explosives and he thinks they should have blown up more stuff. And then, you know, the World Trade Center gets attacked. I have to tell you, I think that the people who created the Weather Underground in college, much like the Nazis, they were like, maybe the public thought they were defeated, but I don't think so. I think they just went underground. And they're re-emerging now, all these years later. And they're embedded in government. Barack Obama is a weatherman. When he says he's going to fundamentally change the nation, I think he's talking about something other than what most people think when they hear that. A lot of people have seen this photo. It's Barack Obama with Bill Ayers, who is now married to Bernadine Dorn. I mean, they were sort of like the Bonnie and Clyde of the Weather Underground. And see, the thing that's weird is when the FBI prosecuted them, they famously did not go to jail. And Bill Ayers left that courthouse, I guess that's 40 Foley Square, and he said, guilty as sin and free as a bird, because it had been determined that wiretaps that were used to gain evidence that was used in the conviction were illegally obtained by the FBI. Now, I did an interview a while ago, must have been more than a year ago by now. I should check if this guy is still alive. He was a pretty old guy. But with Oliver Buck Revell. And again, people who used to watch David Hawkins will remember Oliver Buck Revell was a longtime FBI guy who was alleged in a book to have run out onto the tarmac when Pan Am 103 was about to leave and then exploded over Lockerbie, Scotland, killing everybody on the plane. Bill Barr wrote about that in a book that came out in 2021 or 22, pretty recently. And I was like, why is Bill Barr writing about this? I think what happens is these deep state scumbags like to write books that retell history, kind of like, perhaps, maybe, not yet proven, but a definite possibility, the book that George wrote about George Henry Swigert. Who's to say that book is not total fabrication to lay down the history of their alleged Operation Paperclip Nazi father? It would make a lot of sense. They're both maniacs, psychopaths, the brother worse than George by a lot. But who would do that? Abandon his own son to focus his time on terrorizing me every day? And he's writing to the court now. He's trying to get an injunction against me to stop me from talking about him. It's interesting because that's also what Adam Sharp wanted. By the time we got done with this lawsuit, his attorney said to me, hey, you know, if you sign this thing that says you're never going to talk about Adam Sharp again, we won't force you to pay this 900 grand. And I basically said, look, you're going to not get that 900 grand no matter what, because I'm going to fight it, and I don't have 900 grand. And even if they were to pierce the corporate veil of the corporation, then they'd be coming after Jason Goodman. Then I could represent myself pro se, and I think they realized that I could just do that until the day I die. And as a big, gigantic law firm, pursuing one little idiot for $1 million, particularly when he's demonstrated that he can at least be functional in court, it's going to cost them more than $1 million. 3 years of fighting with me already cost $1 million. Let's fight for another 7. So I think, and maybe they'll come after me for it now, but I don't think so. Because I think what they calculated was, man, well, this worked in terms of getting him kicked off of YouTube, but we're just going to have to spend more money to get this 900,000. And they probably were out of money to do that because the Emmys can't go spending $3, $4, $5 million a year on legal expenses, particularly when they've already blown all this money. So the point is, that all went away. But their goal was to get me to stop talking about Adam Sharp, Valerie Caproni, Twitter, all that. It's ironic that that's the same thing. Hey, is Jimmy the dermatologist? Jimmy Cameron, is he the dermatologist? Can't see straight. How could he be a dermatologist? Can't even wipe his own ass, and his father is busy pursuing me. So they've got a bit of a problem in that they can't sue me, or I mean they could, but they're not going to succeed on a defamation claim about any of this stuff, and they don't want to do that because they don't want to go into court and start talking about all the things that they want me to stop talking about. So they keep sicking their dog on me because he's got nothing better to do but sit in his RV and drum up these kind of stupid fake causes of action. Chris is saying it seems like Joseph McCarthy was right. That might be true. I learned only fairly recently that Joseph McCarthy died in his 40s. Like maybe he was 49. And they said he died of alcoholism. And I mean, I guess that's possible, for sure. But it's still pretty young. I mean, I know a bunch of alcoholics. How old is George? He's in his 60s. Maybe he's not the worst alcoholic anybody ever has seen, but you see some people rolling around New York City who say, I mean, look, everybody's different. It could be normal, but it's just interesting because Adam Sharp's father also died at, I think, 50 or 51. I went into this whole session with Claude.ai asking it about cancer statistics and how likely is it for somebody at that age, 51 or whatever it was, to die of lung cancer, and it was actually remarkably unlikely. And then I asked it a bunch of questions about, you know, do you know about Jack Ruby? And he also died of lung cancer. Ruby was 56 when he died of lung cancer, and he had been in jail for a little while. So this is interesting because a lot of people will say, well, you know, Jack Ruby, he ran a nightclub in Dallas in the 1960s, so he's going to be exposed to a lot of secondhand smoke. That's absolutely true. But by the time he was in jail for 2 or 3 years, that exposure would have been, I don't think you could smoke in jail, can you? Maybe you can, but probably not as much as a nightclub. You're not going to have ready access to cigarettes. And the point is, I've often heard that if a smoker quits, starting the first day, your risk of lung cancer starts to go down. And I remember I once saw this whole, you know, chart or explanation or whatever it was about how many months after quitting smoking and your risk of lung cancer diminishing. So it doesn't make sense that he would contract and die of lung cancer so quickly after he stops being exposed to secondhand smoke. And Jack Ruby famously said, even in trial, that he was injected with some sort of cancer-causing agent while he was in jail, and he died of lung cancer. Now, I have no proof that that happened to Roger Sharp, but we do have proof that Roger Sharp was inside the Dallas police station November 22nd, 1963. And when I started asking the highly skeptical AI, which I enjoyed, I like that kind of skepticism on these questions, I said, doesn't it seem extremely unlikely that two people who are so young, it gave me the odds of a 51-year-old male in 1986 or whenever Roger Sharp died, the odds of somebody that age dying. Then it gave me the odds of a 56-year-old male in 1960, whatever, when Ruby died. And I said, well, then what are the odds of two people who are so closely connected to such a historic event as the JFK assassination? And it said something like, the specific odds of that are difficult to calculate because there's so many variables, but it is suspicious and blah, blah, blah. And the fact that I got the AI to admit that it was suspicious was interesting. So people are now talking about Roy Cohn, right, because he was helping McCarthy, wasn't he? Wasn't he? So did somebody kill McCarthy? Has anybody ever looked into that? I don't know. But I don't smoke, I don't go to nightclubs. Somebody is saying they don't drink. I don't really drink either anymore. I mean, I used to, but I've said it many times. My second wife didn't drink, and I just kind of got out of it, and then got very into detox and health after we got divorced, and just didn't drink hardly at all for a long time. And then during the pandemic, just got out of it. All mobile video. Hate those guys. I've mentioned, they screwed me. Was that a Sheryl Crow thing we did in 3D? All these kind of video production companies, I honestly believe there are producers out there whose method involves after the fact. They make the deal, and then when it's done, they come to you and it's like, oh, yeah, I know I owe you the last 5,000, but this and that and the other thing. And they just screw everybody out of 5,000. And if you do that to 5 or 10 or 20 people, suddenly you have a lot of money. So those, I think, are the tallest buildings in New York right now. These tall, skinny, mega $1,000,000 apartments in there. It's kind of a long walk. So let's take a look at the comments here. Drinking is a waste of money. I agree, and it's terrible for your health. And I just got to a point, maybe it's my age or whatever, where the crappiness of feeling crappy the following day and not being able to think straight for a portion of the day, and just, I dislike that more than I enjoy being drunk. So it was just sort of easy to stop. Didn't RFK also work for McCarthy? Interesting, I don't know. Yeah, I mean, it's worthwhile to do more investigation into McCarthy, particularly Roy Cohn, all that stuff. So much weird stuff going on because, Roger Stone is still around. And that takes us back to, Laura and that whole thing that was going in the park on Monday. Why was everybody there? Like an NYPD, FBI, street theater, UCO. Did Laura know that? No chemtrails today? Good. Yeah, it's a nice clear day. I mean, does Laura know how many social engineers were surrounding her event? Somebody says, didn't Jolly West visit Ruby in prison before he got cancer? I mean, I don't know that detail specifically, but the AI knew, and it's, famously known that Jack Ruby says he got injected with cancer-causing stuff in jail. And then people have also seen the interviews with Judith Very Baker, who I've met many times, actually. I've even, I think, been to dinner with her, or maybe lunch. Where was that? In Sweden, right? I've met her in person. Oh, Texas. I think both. Because I went to Sweden. She lives in Sweden, and I went there one time to do something with Ole. I forget the details now, but she was there, and then also in Texas. So I've met her many times, and you know, she's a unique person, but that's obvious whether what she says is true or not. And I think it is, you know. I mean, what she's basically said, for people who don't know, is that Oswald's wife had connections? No. I think you're thinking of Judith Very Baker, not his wife. So the story that is told by Judith Very Baker is that her grandmother died of cancer when she was a little girl, like 10 or 12 or something like that. So she got into science because she wanted to cure cancer. And her high school, she was so smart and so adept at doing this research, she had developed some method of cultivating cancer in mice really quickly, this rapidly metastasizing cancer that was useful for cancer research in mice because, I don't know, scientists could tell you, they just want to get to it quickly. They don't want to wait around for these mice to cook. But then, according to her, she had this whole science fair in high school, which she said that people, doctors and everything, came from Germany and all over. This is going to be funny. This little girl is trying to hide from her dad, but I just clued him in because I don't want him to worry. Let's see how it goes. Yeah, see? He knew. That's a sweet moment to capture. But, so she has this science fair, and scientists from Germany she mentioned. But that would have been the 60s, so I don't know. They're already going to be Operation Paperclip if they're here. Anyway, point of the matter is, she goes to work for Alton Oshner, right? Isn't that his name? Alton? He's probably an Operation Paperclip Nazi, but now Oshner Medical Group is like the largest hospitals in Louisiana. She went to, I guess, Tulane and was working for this guy, she thought, to cure cancer, but then ultimately she learned that she was working for the CIA to develop this weaponized cancer, and she said that Lee Harvey Oswald's David Ferry was involved with this, and Dr. Mary's monkeys with the particle accelerator and everything. Yeah, I think, right, that had something to do with how they were growing the cancer, was the particle accelerator. I gotta go back to those books. I don't remember all the details, but yeah, people know. They're mentioning the different names that were involved. And basically, Judith Very Baker figured out that she wasn't working to cure cancer, they were working to weaponize cancer. And speaking of the CIA, that Lee Harvey Oswald's purpose was to go to Cuba with this weaponized cancer and give it to somebody who was part of Castro's medical team, and they were going to inject him with cancer. I mean, it's sort of the ideal assassination tool for the CIA, right? They can just say, oh no, we didn't kill Roger Sharp because he was getting cold feet about being a CIA scumbag. He just died of lung cancer. And of course everybody's going to believe that. That dude smoked like 2 packs a day. Good excuse. I mean, anybody over a certain age, you have a heart attack or lung cancer, and it sort of becomes difficult to argue with. But yeah, that was Jack Ruby. People are saying Jack Ruby was more the mafia end of it. Well, let's again bring it back to what we're talking about today. Johnny Tobacco. And look at this little dog. Wow, that's a cute dog. Johnny Tobacco and Scott Libido are cultivating these characters that are just basically almost like Sopranos kind of characters, right? I guess they figure people see New York people on YouTube or Twitter or wherever, X, and that's how they're supposed to be, or maybe that's how those guys really are, but they seem like actors to me. They're definitely always around when the police are there. I gotta find that video where Charles and I just, happened to walk past the George Berger Gallery, and Scott Libido was there doing one of his activist art installations. And I was like, oh, there's Scott Libido. I mean, I thought he was my buddy because I had spoken to him at these things and he's friendly and everything. And he had that whole don't sink the ship. I went up to him at that Don't Give Up the Ship event that he put on. And I said, you know what, you've convinced me. I was gonna leave New York, but I'll stay. Now, I'm still staying for the time being. I'm not crazy about it, but no longer because of him. But anyway, that was a really expensive thing to put on. He had a sound system and, I don't know, does that guy have tons of money? Are artists generally, like artists in Staten Island, are they generally the type of people that you would think have a lot of money to throw? I don't know, what would that cost, 10 grand? People are saying I'd be happy with a dog in my life. I think that's true if I had a house, but my apartment, a dog would be not compatible, and walking it all the time, and I don't know anything about dogs. That was a really cute one, you got to admit, right? I mean, how old was that dog? A couple weeks, maybe? And maybe that's yes, right, Australian sheepdog, right? Blue skies? I think it is an Aussie. Look, I like Australia. I just don't want them censoring the internet. Oshner had big ties in Latin America. Well, that doesn't make me think less that he's a Nazi. So, I mean, again, this all comes down to this like globalist control. And people were saying that Jack Ruby was more of the mafia. Well, I mean, if there is a spectrum, and I'm not saying that Scott Libido or Johnny Tobacco are in the mafia. I have no evidence of that. I'm just saying Johnny Tobacco cultivates this image where he calls his news show Wise Guys. He has his Twitter handle is Wise Guys. When I see him, he's got whatever logo is with the Godfather font. So it's not like he's trying to, I have plenty of friends who are Italian who anytime anything comes up about mafia, it's like when, something with Israel and people say it about me. Like, just because I'm Jewish, I don't, just because somebody's Italian doesn't mean they're in the mafia. But when you dress like you're in the mafia and you talk like you're in the mafia and you act like you're in the mafia, you style your show after mafia iconography and imagery, if there were a sort of spectrum, I would say Johnny Tobacco is closer to the mafia end of the spectrum than the CIA end of the spectrum, but people are just, pointing out exactly what I'm saying. There's always been this nexus of organized crime and law enforcement, right? Whitey Bulger. So, I mean, it takes us back to George and his brother. I'm alleging that the guy is breaking the law. He's stalking me. I've presented evidence that he's filed forged documents in court. He's lying about that. But they will not present evidence to refute what I'm saying. For people who are unfamiliar with this particular argument, in the litany of legal actions that these idiots have caused to come against me, one of them was in the Eastern District of Michigan. And in the course of trying to jam me up, I identified a document that was forged. And metadata, forensic digital evidence within the document itself, proved that. I showed it to a detective at the Detroit Police Department. She agreed with me. She said there's an excellent investigation beyond the capability of the detectives at the Detroit Police Department, but she agreed that it was very compelling evidence and that she agreed that the clerk did it, but she told me that she can't do anything because it's federal jurisdiction. So the FBI also said that. Kenneth Engberg of the FBI, who, you know, George's brother, now contacts these people. He's a friggin' maniac. And he's saying he never worked for the NIH. That's another thing. So if I say somebody worked for the NIH and they don't,
So it's human nature.
it's a mistake if it's wrong. But I don't think it's actionable. Is it defamatory to say that somebody works for the NIH? It's defamatory to say somebody's a rapist when they aren't. But that's what these guys do. They put out defamatory statements, and then they want to find ways to launder them into the clear. I don't know if I should talk about this with Jack Maxey, but this concept of laundering information into the clear, I think it's a very powerful thing. And when I say I don't think I should talk about it, it's not because I know something that I'm keeping from everybody. It's because it's speculative, so I shouldn't talk about it. Because if I don't know for sure, I shouldn't speculate. I didn't realize I was all the way over here on 10th Ave. Let's start getting a little bit further east. But the laundering of information into the clear, they were doing that all the time. That was like, you know, anonymous morons with Twitter accounts or 4chan accounts or whatever they have, put out some... What is going on? That was somebody in that vehicle that made those dudes go crazy. I don't know. Somebody posts something totally ridiculous. Twitter, 4chan, whatever. Then other people say, oh, allegations on this website say blah, blah, blah. Then they put it into a lawsuit. Then they can say, oh, allegations in the lawsuit say blah, blah, blah. Then I sue Chris Boozy and fail because obviously the magistrate used to work with James Comey. Valerie Caproni had, at the time, an unconstitutional sanction on me, very similar to what they're doing to Donald Trump, that compelled me to directly alert her of any lawsuits that I was involved in and to alert those lawsuits that, according to her, I had violated her order, which was separately a lie. But this is how this complex lawfare, that's what I need to start talking about. You know, complex litigation. I don't really even know what that is. Like, is there simple litigation? I don't know. But complex lawfare is all these different cases that interrelate, and each one of them creates one component that will be utilized in another. For instance, you know, Donald Trump gets a gag order in this case so that he can be thrown in jail, so that affects something over here in this other case. Or, you know, they have, we just had Aileen Cannon overturned, or you know, she unsealed, what do we got here? The cops are up to something. She unsealed some previously redacted information, some, you know, confidential stuff that was filed under seal that seems to have revealed, you know, more involvement of the Biden administration in this sort of obviously illegal and unjustified and unconstitutional series of indictments against Trump. I shouldn't have been walking here. The cops are going to get pissed. But these things stack up one upon the other. They interconnect. And I've speculated that Dershowitz was doing something like this with the Giuffre v. Dershowitz, where David Boies was his, you know, his sort of stage adversary. I saw evidence that those guys were working together. I don't know enough about the case or the details to know for sure exactly what they would have been doing, but it sure seemed that way to me. See this? They get very upset. These people who are here illegally don't want to be filmed. They were yelling at Laura. I gotta say, I think she was antagonizing that a bit, putting the cops in danger. But there's a lot of migrant families going around. A lot. Did people hear Mike Johnson's speech earlier? Somebody says they saw George's brother in Michigan rain cry. What do you mean? Where did you see him in Michigan? And someone's here talking about Michael Jackson. What about Michael Jackson? U.S. Marshals have federal jurisdiction. Yeah, but they won't do anything either. I've called all of these things. They won't do anything. And in fact, you know, Lurie at one point, I even tried to, I forget the details, but I tried to bring him into the lawsuit because I'm just saying, look, if I'm wrong, George should have a receipt from the website that is the Pro Se electronic filing portal. So in other words, when I counteract what those guys are saying, so this guy's crazy, rolling up on me or something. All they need to do is present the receipt, and that would prove that my allegation is not correct. But it has been years, and there is no receipt because I'm correct. They forged the document and they put it in there, and they never presumed that I would figure it out, let alone figure out exactly how it happened, because even the fucking stupid FBI was too dense to understand what I was talking about without like an hour on the phone. And this was the supervisory special agent before I got connected up with Engberg, who is a goddamn dick. Everybody I've encountered who works for the FBI is an absolute fuck. Sorry, FBI. And so, you know, I don't know, George's brother is now somehow trying to get them involved in some way. He's just an idiot. He sends things every day. I think he's used to threatening people because he's a bully. And I don't put up with that kind of stuff. So as I look back through his litigation history, there is nobody who has resisted his stupidity as long as I have. And now I'm in the phase where I'm trying to get him shut down to remove his ability to continue doing this to me or anyone. I don't know if I'll be able to do that. It's still highly probable that the court will just act against me because it seems like the FBI and the court and criminals are all in league. Yeah, no, I know. That guy was trying to attack me. Thank you, Jerry. I appreciate that. Somebody's talking about their dad has a dog, 100% pad trained. It works magic for small dogs. Might be. Speaking of dads, that's the other thing I've been talking about, is that George's psychotic brother has taken to harassing my parents, who are quite old, and the stress is bad for their health. Frankly, if I could, I would have charged him with attempted murder when he started agitating Lee after his stroke. Think about that. Think about what a psychopath he is. If Lee had another stroke because he was getting all upset with emails from George's brother, he would sit in the RV and mission accomplished, right? This guy is a menace. For the social engineering accounts out there wondering why I'm speaking about it every day, it's because the guy is still out menacing people. And what he wants is for me to not speak about what he's doing, not go into the details of the fact that George is an obvious liar. If you watch George and you think he's being honest with you, you should demand that he present the filing receipt for ECF number 12 in the Eastern District of Michigan. He'll know exactly what I'm talking about. And by the way, notice what he tries to compel me to do, depixelate. And I say, George, what are you talking about? First of all, you can't depixelate something. You could present the original image, but you've already done that. So why bother? If I had the electronic filing receipt for ECF number 12, I would have never raised these allegations because that would indicate that the thing was properly filed. The problem is, I see a lot of other evidence that it wasn't properly filed. And when I start entering that evidence, everybody in the court, including the judge, freaks out. And instead of trying to get to the bottom of it, they disallow me from filing things in the court. That happened. I mean, it's almost too much stuff to even do counter lawfare broadcasts about. But that's the other thing that he's saying, is that he's concocted this false idea that I am bringing lawsuits to make counter lawfare shows. That's false. I really don't know what's going to happen with this Goodman versus NYPD, because, you know, now that we have, what does this say? This is breaking news. Uh-huh. Okay. That's fine. See, there's a game being played. And every time they keep playing it, it becomes increasingly obvious what is going on. So where we are with this case right now, that's Goodman versus City of New York. This is a poker game. I have a hand and they have a hand. But what we're dealing with now is bluffing. And that's when you look across the table and you look at the demeanor of the other players and you gauge, are they confident or no? I feel a no. But we're not going to go into the details of what that email just said. That was not from Elon Musk's attorney. That was from the attorney for New York City. And I think she's got some problems in this case. But Elon Musk appeared by counsel on Monday. So what does that mean? Well, I brought this lawsuit October 31st, 2023. One day before the expiration of the statute of limitations. And that happened because I was going to let the whole thing go, you know? I've just got so many lawsuits and so much other stuff to do. I like inflatable things, advertising stuff that they have nothing to do with. Uncle Sam and cows make you want to buy flowers. They could get an inflatable gorilla here for the tires. But October 31st, I wasn't going to bring the lawsuit. I just said, you know what, I can't sue everybody, and this thing is a mess, and just let it go. But I was really torn by that because I felt very wronged by this person who choked me and then just walked away. And then the NYPD lied, obviously, to protect the guy. I mean, the whole thing just reeked. But I said, you know, I'm one person and I focus on all these lawsuits. Maybe I should just focus on the show. But then I read that Walter Isaacson, Elon Musk book. And in it, Musk describes how when he was starting SpaceX, he went to all these different space meetings and met people from NASA and all these different guys. And he somehow found out that something that SpaceX was bidding on for NASA had been given to some less capable competitor with a no-bid contract. I forget the details. People need to read the book if they want to find that out. But he basically got the notion that he was going to sue NASA, and he talks about how everybody told him, look, that's crazy. You're starting a space company, and you know the client is going to be NASA. If you sue them, they're never going to want to work with you. And Elon Musk said, well, it doesn't matter. This is the right thing, and so I'm going to do it. And he prevailed. And he went into some depth in the book as to how he knew it was the right thing to do. And even though other people said he shouldn't, and there were factors weighing against it, he did it and he prevailed. And I said, wow, this is the universe telling me to bring this lawsuit. So it admittedly was written pretty hurriedly, and I don't know, I think it's good. I didn't make things up. I mean, I've read a lot of motions to dismiss that are pointing out problems that it has, which some seemed correct. I hope I have rectified those. But it's not like I made up a bunch of fake stuff and went into court and said, you know, I didn't say Donald Trump raped me at Bergdorf Goodman 30 years ago. I didn't say, you know, Elon Musk came over to my apartment and stole $1 million, so I'm suing him for $1 million. The fact is I got choked outside Twitter. when I went there to tell him that the FBI is controlling Twitter. And at the time that I went there, James Baker was still the FBI general counsel, and George's brother was still monitoring everything I'm doing like he does right now. Probably go call the NYPD and tell them I was walking in the bicycle lane. He does crap like that. Send these videos around. Do whatever you want, Dave. I'm gonna get you thrown in jail. If it takes the rest of my life, that's what I'm gonna be working on. Until you go to jail, you disgusting, horrible piece of shit. You're harassing my parents. Here, I'm jaywalking. Call the cops. Harassing my parents. Who does that? Goes and attacks. He'll say, oh, you say stuff about my family. I never said a damn thing about this loser until they started attacking me every single day. So there is this nexus between the Swigert brothers and Valerie Caproni that began with George's origin story, where he's the one who said he went to some protest at Portland, you know, with the bomber. I never heard about that story until George told me about it, and it wasn't until 2023 that I became aware that Valerie Caproni had anything to do with it. So you see, the way these losers work is that they smash and grab, right? Their victim is usually hit by a lawsuit and bankrupted and spun out of whatever it is they don't want them doing by the time they figure anything out. The problem that I've presented is I've managed to stay on the log for 7 years and keep it rolling. And I have a feeling they hate that, but I don't care. What video? Yes, I have the video. He tried swinging at you, the guy behind me, did he? Boy, I missed that. If he had hit me, that would have been bad. I'll have to check that later. Wow. Yeah, there's crazy people out. And by the way, the other thing is, you know, Oren Levi, who's part of this whole NYPD, JTTF, whatever they are, his brother told me they're Mossad. So is Mossad involved in JTTF? Could be. Why not? But they're, you know, he's coming up to me on the street. I gotta find that video too. I gotta really start putting together a collection of all this different evidence, because it's irrefutable, you know? And it's interesting to me because it causes me to kind of reconsider some of these claims. I haven't heard it too much lately, but there was a time a while ago where a lot of people were talking about this concept of targeted individuals. Remember Michael Barden? That was longer ago than I realized. That might have been 5 years ago that I was dealing with Michael Barden. And he was saying that he was a targeted individual. And I will admit, there's a little bit of eye rolling that goes on when you hear that language, because the whole thing was put together to make the person making that claim, to make them sound crazy. And Michael Barden was the first guy who I had encountered who was making those claims, who actually had photo and video evidence that supported his claims. And, you know, he didn't have the same situation that I have. He had kids, and he was having some money problems because the legal case against him was very expensive, and work was difficult, and kids to support and all that. And they put a lot of pressure on him, and I remember George's brother had a really unusual interest in that guy. And remember, Michael Barden was also in the Air Force. And the Air Force, remember, was created in 1947 or 1948, right around there. It was created by the same National Security Act that created the CIA. So that also is very Operation Paperclip-ish. Maybe the Air Force is more integrated with the CIA than the public actually knows. The U-2 spy plane was operated by the CIA, I think, not the Air Force, or some sort of joint something or other. And by the way, Lee Harvey Oswald was a radar technician at a U-2 spy base in Japan. Wow. Blue Sky says, first time visiting LA, cops converged on me like I was a bank robber for jaywalking. Yeah, LAPD is a different animal than NYPD. I mean, you know, it's, in my experience, you don't really encounter the police as much as you do in New York City because there's so much stuff that you're doing on foot. Are you guys upset that Sam Ash is closing soon?
A little bit.
I recognize you. Anyway, they don't seem that upset. I think I've seen that guy before, maybe on YouTube or something. I was disappointed. I'm not even a musician, but I don't like to see businesses like that close. It's going to make it harder to get electronic equipment around here in New York City. I can't believe that this is still open, but I don't know. George's brother is very interested in Michael Barden, who's in the Air Force. Did Michael Barden learn something while he was in the Air Force that caused them to want to send a bunch of people stalking him? You know, Oren Levi came up to me on the street, recognized me from across the street, behind me, half a block away. How did he do that? How did he recognize me? And he said, "Oh, I love your show." I said, "What's it called?" He didn't know. "What's my name?" He didn't know. That's a lie, obviously. So I don't know. I never really got to find out what happened to Michael Barden. He lost his, he signed a plea deal.
Oh, nothing, okay?
This dude's out of his mind. Oh yeah, Ford just announced, this isn't it, but there's a 60th anniversary Mustang coming out. I'm not sure what it's going to do, but I like those anniversary Fords. This have something special. I guess usually it's just styling. But I don't know. I did see Michael Barden. I think he's still doing videos. I was going to reach out to him, but the last time I spoke to him, I feel badly for Michael. Like I said, he had a bad outcome in that case, and that had a lot to do with George's brother interfering. I don't know why he felt the need to do that, but I'm talking about him and fighting him in court, not just to get him off of me. I'm serious when I say this guy is a menace to the public. What he did to Michael Barden is terrible, and he doesn't care. That's why I say he's a psychopath. He doesn't care that he had lifelong impact on Michael Barden's life, his relationship with his children, his job, his ability to improve his standing in life or get a better home or do anything that he might need to do. He's really harmed him. He tried to do that to Lee. He's trying to do that to my mother and father now. He's a sick, deranged psychopath who needs to be brought to justice. He should literally be locked in some horrible prison like Rikers Island and just kept there, away from normal people, so he can't bother anybody or hurt anybody, because like a dog, he's got to be brought to heel. I hope you like this video, Dave. I'm sort of just rambling now because, you know, it was a long walk back from, Right. So Tim, I think, is making reference to, what do people think about that? That Roseanne Barr made some video where she's saying that Joe Biden assaulted her in the shoe store. I thought it was in very poor taste. Doesn't it really diminish the claims of other people who have had actual assaults? I mean, is that a thing to joke about? It's a real serious problem with Roseanne Barr. There was a time that she was watching Crowdsource the Truth and tweeting about it, but that was also to do with the Weather Underground. She really liked Hawkins. That dog has just shoes in the rear. I don't know why. She liked Hawkins, and she used to tweet the show. And then I remember she went on to Joe Rogan at the time that I was doing shows with Tiffany Fitzhenry, who I also believe is a social engineer. And Roseanne Barr mentioned Tiffany, didn't say anything about Crowdsource the Truth or me, right? And then Tiffany, we got into a whole dust-up when she did that stupid movie with Kevin Shipp, who's obviously a social engineer and who tells you that he worked at the CIA, and he'll say, "Oh yeah, but they poisoned my family and did all this." Okay, and then did they just leave you alone, or did they say, okay, now that you've said uncle, here's what you're going to do for us. Go all around, repeat information that Charles Ortel has already put out, and then everybody's going to think you're a genius and that you're, coming hard against the Clinton Foundation or whatever. But it's actually material that's already out, and we're just going to use that damaging material to establish credibility for Kevin Shipp, who's a literal dunce. And then, we'll use him for that Shadowgate or Out of the Shadows or whatever that thing was called. I don't know. All these people are up to craziness. But now we see Roseanne Barr, she's hanging out with Flynn. It's a big problem. Rear drive dog. Oh yeah, was that also an Australian Shepherd dog? I was looking at the shoes. Electric Mustang, the Mach-E. Yeah, I mean, that's not really a Mustang, I don't think. I was a little disappointed that they did that, but the 60th anniversary is going to be an S650 and probably, the big engine and everything. Wow. So, I mean, that's great. Anyway, I'm going to be back in just a little while, so I think I might stop talking now. I'm pretty close to home here, and got to get ready for 8 p.m. with Charles. Don't miss that. We're going to be in the First Amendment Forum. Charles loves the First Amendment Forum because he wants to talk about things without worrying about them getting taken off the internet, and also he likes it that I've devised all these methods of preserving the videos. I mean, there's a bunch of people who have said, oh, my YouTube channel got deleted and I have no copies of the videos. Like, when I heard that, first from Lee when CNN did something to get his videos kicked off, I couldn't believe that somebody, particularly somebody with Lee's production experience. But see, Lee was never really camera department. He's always more post and effects, and somebody else is taking care of where are all the files. So I get it that he doesn't think that way. I came up owning the production company, so like I had to keep track of all the assets, and when a client would call 2 years later and say, oh, we want to do another version of the thing, but we want to keep all this first part, and now the product changed, so change that. I had to have rigorous. I still have cabinets filled. I don't even think I have the software and hardware to restore this stuff if I wanted to. I should look at that and maybe get rid of some of it. But, over 20 or 30 years, I've stored digital files, and I've had all this stuff backed up. That's why people can still see the legacy content on Odyssey.com/@crowdsourcethetruth. And Odyssey is working hard to protect free speech and create these new systems, decentralized, whatever it is, I don't know. I'm sure I'll hear about it when they release it because I'm in pretty close communication with those guys. I just gave them some input on a change they might make to the search engine on Odyssey to allow you to search within a particular date range. Because I was looking for all these videos, of the Staten Island crew, and it's this kind of hodgepodge search mechanism between various files that I have related to the videos and backups of the videos that I have on my own drives, and little sort of vestigial remnants of the videos around the internet. And I just realized that if I could just narrow the date range on Odyssey and search like that, they were intrigued by it and maybe they'll add it. But Odyssey is super responsive to technical support. They're just really, really, in my opinion, good guys with a good product, maybe guys and girls, I don't know. Good people with a good product, and so you should support Odyssey, even if it's only by subscribing for free and watching videos on there. I think that helps them somehow. But become a sponsor, odyssey.com/@crowdsourcethetruth, crowdsourcethetruth.substack.com. Don't forget to read the Twitter coup, and send me a direct message, send me an email. Let me know if you think the Twitter coup reads like a 5-part expose that you'd read in a magazine or something. I wrote it along the lines of, something that you'd see in, like, I don't even know what magazine does this, but like a a 5-part expose broken down into different segments of, the different parts of what happened. But go on to crowdsourcethetruth.substack.com, read the Twitter coup, and tell me if you think it reads like a news article or a manifesto. I think the only thing I might have committed to doing is getting Valerie Caproni impeached, and that's because Congress said she was a criminal. Congress determined she had broken the law like, I forget if it was 400 or 4,000 times. And she's also just obviously, in my view, hasn't been proven in court yet, so this is pure opinion. But she's broken the law and violated my constitutional rights. And the cops are doing that too. So if the FBI, through the JTTF, is essentially one and the same with the NYPD, and I go to Twitter to tell their new private owner, Elon Musk, hey, the FBI owns this, and at the time that I'm there, I don't think I realized that Jim Baker was their deputy general counsel, and by Elon Musk's own public statements, he found out that this guy was working on behalf of the FBI, not Twitter. So if Elon Musk tells Twitter employees to do something, and the guy who is in charge doesn't do it and instead chooses to do something that favors the FBI, doesn't that mean that the owner of Twitter does not control Twitter and that the FBI does? So if the FBI controls Twitter through Jim Baker and the various mechanisms that have been put in place by Valerie Caproni and Adam Sharp, and the FBI controls the NYPD, and I go to Twitter to tell Elon Musk that, and Twitter employees choke me, and then the the NYPD gives me a ticket, isn't it sort of all the FBI working against me to prevent Elon Musk from finding out that the FBI controls Twitter? That's how I see it. They say no. But they are the FBI, basically. So that's how that works. Anyway, thanks for watching, everybody. That was a lengthy walk, another 2-hour walk around New York City. Now we have Chip City. I think Eric Adams calls that the port of Prince of Cookies. I'm sure nobody calls it that. Thanks for tuning in, everybody. I'll see you in, I think, less than an hour. Yeah, 1 hour and 4 minutes. For Charles Ortel is closing in on Wednesday night. Have a great day, everybody. Or have a great hour until I see you again.